Alright, so what are we doing here? What are we doing here? What are we here? Laptop, no video on screen is what I have been given. Alright, what do we got? Alright, we got ourselves a nice little HP here. Grab my power cord. Yeah. Alright, so let's take a look here. Alright, so we have power. We do have HDMI, but it's not really in great shape here. As you can see, connector is basically inaccessible. Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, this thing is really, really torqued here. There we go. Got that out of the way. Let's see if we're getting any video out on this thing. Just did the shortcut for it. Possibly, Emily. I'm not seeing anything on the backlight. So nothing is lighting up on the actual screen. So let's get this, let's get it unplugged and taken apart and see what's going on. So this is an HP 15EG0073CL. It's a Canadian edition computer. Interesting. So on the bottom, normally there'd be a rubber foot here. There's 2 screws there, 2 screws at the front, and that in theory should be it. I have no idea, Emily. I haven't taken it apart yet. There we go, that's charged. So the 2 in the back are different from the 2 in the front, so you make sure you keep them separate. I'll tell you this though, this thing's getting hot. Alright, and then you just need to find an edge to pull it open. I highly, oh, you know what? There's probably, seeing as there was screws under the, seeing as there were screws under the rear feet, there is screws under the front, so there's a total of 6. Should have seen that immediately, but I did not. So those, the front screws and the back screws match as far as these are concerned.
Hey, thanks for checking out this video. If you like these videos, make sure you hit the like button. If you want to see more videos like this, hit the subscribe button. It really, really helps the channel.
Let's get this, there we go. All right, so let's just visually inspect this right off of the gate. There's dust underneath the M.2. Anyway, so we got our, you can see it's actively running. I need to get this battery out. Yeah, this guy's running super hot. I'll have to check this. So we have our battery. We have expandable memory. It looks like we have a total of 16 gigs. We have what appears to be an Optane drive, possibly. We got our Wi-Fi and we got our battery. Relatively easy to take apart. So let's just get this battery out of here, because I don't want it to, while I'm looking around in here, I don't want to short anything. See, there's liquid that's been spilled in here 100%. All right, so first things first, we're worried about this screen, so we're gonna unplug that. We're gonna plug this back in. What we're gonna do is we're gonna test individual things one at a time. And so this is an Intel Core i7. It's actually a pretty high-end laptop. But with this, it's probably DDR4. Plug that back in. You get no light on that. I also get nothing from that. But I also unplugged it, so that doesn't help. All right, we got a light over there now. Fan is spinning. See if this is just going to be a regular old HP and just take forever and a day to display the BIOS post after the battery's been pulled out. This screen could 100% be dead. So we're going to check little things individually here. Plug that in. Nope, not getting anything out of that. No, it is not coming up externally. Alright, let's start let's start removing stuff. First thing, memory. Also, I need to keep an eye on, what we got there? We need to keep an eye on the cap locks here, because that's what HP uses to denote when there's a problem. So we need to pay attention to see if that starts flashing. And yeah, there we go. So, my suspicion was correct. Memory. Probably just needed to be reseated. So let's get this put back in. Another situation where the fix took less time than it took to take apart. If this was like an actual customer, it'd be $100 because it's taking time on my bench where I have to physically take it apart. And basically my rule of thumb is this: if I have to take a screwdriver to your computer, I'm charging you $100 because I am physically taking my time and taking it apart. If it was like just something like I have to unplug the battery and plug the battery back in and that fixes it, I usually charge $50 for that. But as soon as I start, get in there with the screwdriver, it's a different story. How has this thing already lost its magnetism? And the reason I do that is because I got to keep my doors open. Can't afford to work on stuff for free anymore. So my diagnostic fee is $35. And if I determine what the problem is, for that $35, I'll let you know, like, hey, here's what it is. Like, if you want me to fix it, it's $100 plus parts. If not, then you just owe me the $35 for my time. Because it was dropped, Emily. And when you drop RAM, sometimes it just loses its connection. I wonder how dead this battery is. Yeah, but at the same time, all of my repairs are $100 plus parts. So after I've started working on it, it's $100 plus parts. That's just kind of how that works out. No matter how long it takes me to work on it, So, like, I lose money compared to what you're doing. I think that RAM stick might just be dead because, yep, as soon as I put it back in there, no display again. So let's pull that RAM stick out again. See if I have a replacement here for it. I love how I put it back together better than it was. Let's see if that's what I think it is. Let's poke around a little bit. As long as we got this open. We still have the battery in there, so I have to be careful. So this is the memory socket. The memory socket goes right to here. Oh, something's up with this socket. Oh, we found a short. So, like 90% certain this pad is not supposed to be. That coming right off the CPU. Well, this just turned into a bigger pain in my butt. Yeah, these traces are coming right off of here, so... Alright, let's take a little longer look at this. I'm going to go a lot deeper than I expected or planned on with this. So, we know that it works with only a single stick of memory, which means that when we put the second stick of memory in there, it's hitting something that it shouldn't. Alright. Let's be quick about this, but efficient. Alright, first we undo all of our cables, and our memories, NVMe. Let's get this battery out of here. Figure out why this thing is crooked. Alright, battery's out. So they're hoping that, like, even keeping the same fan size, all they had to do was put a larger shroud on it to cover the entire length of this to help cool this thing. It's not doing a great job. Alright, so motherboard screws now. There's one. We gotta keep these. All of the screws in this motherboard are different. So this one is different, this one is different, and this one is different. I need to keep these actually separate. Yep, and now that one's different. Way to go, HP. Who do you think you are, Sony? Oh, it goes there. All right, we got the motherboard out. Yeah, you can see. Sure, Emily, I like HPs. When they're not like garbage, I like them. So let's take a look at this together. See what we see. So first thing that I noticed when I had this thing flipped over. Wrong button. Not button. So we know this is partially working. First thing I see when we're looking at this, we can see this has corrosion on it. You can see liquid here. That is, like, it's not an important port. It is the SD card reader. But now I need to check. I mean, you can see there's a bunch of it over here in this area. Now I need to check these guys to see if any of these are shorted. So let's go ahead and do some beeping real quick. That seems to be fine. That seems to be fine. Good there. Just hitting that. That seems to be fine. Come down this way. Yep, this pad should be ground. Okay. Let's check this HDMI connector. Good there. Alright, so this side of the board generally looks okay. Where I'm getting the short is on the other side. So it's, I believe it's this pad here. I do believe both sides of these things are not supposed to be grounded. Like, I don't think I'm supposed to have, yeah, you see, it's supposed to be like this. So we have a short here. We have a voltage drop here. I know this is the greatest view in the history of views. All right, so one side of this is supposed to be shorted. The other side is not.
And now for something completely different.
Before we dive into this, we're going to have a little conversation here. And that conversation we're going to have is going to be about circuit testing on a motherboard. And there's a reason we're going to have this conversation. And this is a perfect, let's flip this over. This is a perfect video and a perfect time for me to talk about this. In this video you're currently watching, you are seeing me basically move every single component that is in this area of the motherboard. Everything that's here is going to be low resistance, and that is because it is connected directly to the CPU. And everything, when the CPU is turned off, everything that is directly connected is going to have low resistance. So when you probe it with a multimeter in continuity mode, it's going to come back short. So you see me take what in actuality was 2 or 3 hours to remove the connection from each individual component from one side to the other and try and figure out why I still had a short. When I was working on this was still relatively early on in my understanding of how laptop motherboard circuits work. I know more now, but I'm going to let someone else explain why this is like this.
So if we check the other side of them, if we check one of these inductors, we should see a different value. And we do. We've got 3.3 ohms or 3.2 ohms. And that is completely natural to see that amount of resistance going through the CPU. And this is where another misconception comes in. A lot of people will measure these guys in continuity mode, in beep mode, and your multimeter will beep. If I go into beep mode here, we go, oh, it's beeping. Oh, my CPU is dead. No, your CPU is fine. It is low resistance. This is completely normal.
So, yeah, just go with this understanding for the rest of this video that that's what I was doing. I didn't understand that. I didn't realize that. But in the end, it ended up being good practice for me for my desoldering and resoldering skills. So, all right, back to the video. So we need to figure out which side is supposed to be ground. So I'm pretty sure this pad is not supposed to be short, but what do I know? All right. Not ground, ground. So this pad should be ground. This pad should not be ground. So I'm going to check each of these real quick, see if I get different readings. So these are all reading 26 ohms. None of them are really out of spec with one another. So now I'm just curious why this stuff would be in... This would be shorted. This isn't shorted, right? Alright, let's see if we're missing any components here. That should be something I should start checking. So this should be... This is the other side of the memory. Something that I wish I would have learned a lot sooner in my journey into like getting back into doing board level diagnostics is if you have a component like this that is on one side going to ground and the other side is not going to ground, instead of having to test every single component that is connected to this ground plane or to this plane of the circuit board, if one of them is bad, then all of them are going to read as bad. So if one of them reads fine, then they're all going to read fine. So, because this plane goes from here all the way over to here, all the way around, all these little connections, all the way over to here, and all the way down. We can rotate this. It goes under here, goes under this. So if I test one component here, right here, and it reads as not shorted, none of the components that have one side of them touching this are going to read as bad. So a perfect example of that is this section right here. So if I check this side, okay, that's going to ground. But if I check this side, oh, this is also going to ground. So if I'm checking this and one of these, any of these here that are connected to this plane are reading as a ground, then I know every single component that is connected to this will read as a ground. So if I want to try and trace this back, I can say, okay, there is a pad here where something would be connected that would take me from this pad to this pad. Let's check. That's reading as going to ground. This is also reading as going to ground. Well, okay, what about coming off of that pad? So let's look at this. So from right here, we have nothing going off that way, but we do have one leg that comes down to here. What I can do is I can check this. Yep, still reading as ground. But what about this one? That one doesn't read that it's going to ground. So, and now this is not a hard rule, but it is a good, like, hey, this might be where my problem is located. If this side does not go to ground and this side does go to ground, then generally that means if there's a component across here, this will be the ground, this will not be the ground. Which means this should be ground, which then means this should not be ground. Now that is not a hard rule. That is just a, like, for quick diagnostics sakes, that is something you can use, and you can say, okay, there might be something wrong in this area. In this particular situation, what this pad is connected to is the CPU, which when you have pads directly connected to the CPU, sometimes when the CPU doesn't have power going to it, something like this pad will read to ground. And as soon as the CPU gets power, that'll no longer read to ground, because they're giant switches. So in this case, I can't trust that there's actually a component that's bad here. But I know that if I were to give this power and I still check this and this was still reading as a short, that could be part of the problem. So what that means is when I'm looking at some of these smaller pads like this, if I check here, if this side reading it's to ground, this side not to ground. So that means that any of the components that are on here, this component and this component and this component, any of these pads that I check, they should all read to ground. So let's say theoretically that this component was bad. So that would mean if I checked this side, it would read that it's to ground. And I would check this and it's reading to ground. That would mean that this would read to ground, that would read to ground, that would read to ground, this would read to ground, this would read to ground, this, and that. All of those points would read to ground. Which means then I have now isolated that something on this pad right here is a problem. So, and then I start checking these individual components. So, like I said, I wish I would have remembered that's how this works a long time ago. I would have saved myself some time. I was looking at some old VODs from when I first started getting back into component repair, and like I was just going through and I was just going, let me check every single component to see if any of them are bad, not like remembering that, hey, on this whole pad, I just need to check one side, one component. And if that component reads as a ground on both sides, then there's something wrong in that pad. All right, now back to what we're actually trying to figure out here. Right now, we're trying to isolate why when I put this second stick of memory in here, the computer no longer boots. Now, I'm getting too far away from where the problem potentially is. Let's check these guys. That could potentially be an issue. But again, that's part of the power circuit that goes directly to the CPU. And this is our video connector. So now I start asking questions. Over here, I will ask questions about this. So those are both reading the same. So if one of these, so this is another good example. So let's say the short, whatever the problem is coming from this pad. Let's say it's like one of these. So this is supposed to be ground. So you see how this side reads short, this side does not read short. So this is supposed to be connected to ground. So this whole side of this should be fine. So when I check these, I should be getting 0 ohms of resistance. Not resistance, that's not the word that I wanted to use. This side, I'm reading 25 ohms. 25, these should all read 25 on this. What I want to look for is, that's reading 83. This should read 83. Yep. So, could it be one of these MOSFETs? So these should not... Yeah, so this is fine here. We're fine here. Fine here on this side. Both sides of this should not be reading. So both sides of this should not be reading as going to ground. Let's see if taking this out changes that. So, this side is not a ground plane. This is a ground plane. This should not be... Okay. So, this is a ground plane. This side should not be. And this side goes to this. We're going back to... There is actually a problem on this. But figuring out which of the components it is going to be... problem. So we've isolated it actually down to something. It's either this could be one of these. So this side is not a ground plane. This is a ground plane, so we don't have a short there. So we've now pretty much we haven't isolated it at all because both of these are ground planes. Yeah, it definitely could be. Could be. So what do we do? What do we do? I wish I could just put a little bit of temperature into this, or a little bit of power into it, and see if something starts heating up thermally. I guess let's go ahead and do that. Let's pull out the DC jack. Let's grab my thermal camera. And I'll take this time to go ahead and stretch. Like, I'm not even looking to turn it on. I'm just looking to have electricity flow through the board. See if something heats up. Because that'll be a pretty good indicator if something is going on. And then I can isolate it. And then I can also check for shorts to ground as well, to see if I get some sort of different reading per se. I'll keep this up on screen because that's actually what I'm going to be looking at. Okay, so we have power plugged in now. You are getting very hot. Oh, what are you? Yeah, that's what I'm in the process of doing. All right, let's go back to this. So we can see a lot of this, what you're seeing is just reflective. But when we get nothing there, all right, so I'm not specifically seeing anything. That maybe? So let's remove it from power. Put that back in there. Now that that's back in there, let's see if something starts heating up now. Everything is generally staying cool, so we're not seeing any hot spots. Short is bad, Emily. Only thing I'm seeing that's a little bit warm, not right there. That's like minor. Other than that, not really seeing anything. I thought this was getting hot. Nothing major. I guess let's check the other side of the board. Sure, we're not seeing anything down here. Same deal. Everything looks to be perfectly fine. So now I'm at a complete and utter loss as to why. Well, one, why I have a short here. Because they could definitely be, like, that could just be normal. So we're going to put this back in here. We're going to hook the keyboard back up. We're going to plug the fan back in. We're going to turn this thing back on. I'm going to turn it on and see if we get hot spots appearing on the board. My luck, I'm going to put this thing back in here. I'm going to turn it on, and it's just going to work. Because, you know, that's just how my luck works. We're going to try a couple different things here. So we are definitely getting heat from here and here. These guys are super toasty. And then we have minor hot spots over here. So let's unplug that. Let's take out the secondary stick of memory. We'll see if that happens again, because we have to wait for the CMOS reset to happen. Yeah, look at that. It had a difference. So something about putting that second memory into this motherboard causes it to stop functioning. And we're going to test to see if it's this specific memory stick or if it's the slot. But as you can see, we're posting 100% now. Admin. So then we can just assume that these temperature hotspots that we're seeing, like that, and these are normal. So let's put it back in. Power. And right now we have to wait for the same CMOS reset. Got the same thing. So there's nothing wrong with the memory. It's something to do with the way, with this slot being read by the CPU. We have determined that it is a bad memory channel. So how do we remedy a bad memory channel? That is the question. So let's start unplugging some stuff. I need to move on. I got some other computers to work on, but this is something that is always, like, I have replaced multiple motherboards that have bad memory channels, and there's got to be a way to repair said memory channels. unless the memory, the thing that is causing the memory channel to be bad is the CPU, in which case you're just SOL, unfortunately. So let's get this motherboard out one more time. Yes, which if this is not repairable, then like Tech is saying, the only option you have is if you still need, in this case, I believe each of these is 8 gigs. If you still need 16 gigs of memory, then you are going to a 16 gig stick of memory or a 32 gig. This is all part of that power circuit that I saw heating up. What's really wild to me is that the computer is still working. Like, I don't know what to do with that, you know? So this is all part of that power circuit that I saw on the other side that has a short. So it's got to be something with the CPU then. It's just like that's what we're coming down to. There's not really much anything else on this that could be potentially not correct, because we know it's not the memory stick. We've tried the memory stick in both slots and it works in one slot but not the other. And same thing with having 2 sticks in here versus 1 stick. So at this point, we're gonna put it back together. Because this line indicates like the power side. Because this is power going to that. This is power going to that. All right, you know what? Let's give it a shot. Worst case scenario, I'm just putting the components back on. Yes, I actually can. So not only did I remove every capacitor from this portion of the motherboard, on the opposite side, I also removed these 2 diodes. On the opposite side of the motherboard, there was a batch of 40 capacitors, and I removed each one of them to verify that they weren't causing the short, which they're not. So this pad and like all of these are shorted, coming directly from the CPU. So that's what happened while you were gone. And that actually is exactly what happened. Now, before I go any farther, with 1 stick of memory in there, well, it was booting with 1 DIMM. Apparently, I appear to have jinxed myself. So, and it works a lot differently at that when you got the actual right tools for everything. It's crazy going back and watching what I like, how it used to work with the tools that I had, and it just wasn't cutting it. I couldn't heat the board up enough, and you know they always say, like, don't blame the tools, blame the user. Well, tools were lying to me about how much heat they were actually making. So, all right. Let's see if it actually starts up now. We have solid light. Should see the CMOS thing here in just a second. And there we go. Wi-Fi is working. I don't see a button for it. I'm like 99% sure I actually plugged that back in. Well, it's plugged in. Wonder if it's just disabled, or if it's like another casualty of this thing being dropped. Yeah, that's one of the big things, is like, I'm going into this mostly blind. Like, me not actually knowing what all potential things could be damaged on this. We're just gonna verify that's back in there. And I'm going to make sure this gets in there all the way. I don't know if that's in there any deeper. That's what she said. But yeah, this could just be one of those things where the trackpad itself is disabled. Or, like I said, it could just be a casualty of being... So yeah, thanks for coming along with me on this journey. It's fun to do this kind of stuff. Hey, thanks for watching that video. If you liked that video, make sure you hit the like button. If you want to see more videos like this, make sure you hit the subscribe button. And I stream daily on Twitch at twitch.tv/SpecVengeance. And yeah, if you want to learn more about my services, check out Bradenton PC Repair.com. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.